Hi everyone, welcome to the Stay Hungry podcast. Today I'm going to be chatting to you about taking a brand massive, and I've got a special guest from CBPLUS for you. Hayley, your first podcast.
It is indeed.
And tell us who you are.
Okay, so I'm Hayley. I'm co-founder of CBPLUS.
Yep.
My background is primarily from the booze trade, so I spent a lot of time selling wine and gin, which is obviously exciting. Meant a lot of travel around the world, which was great. And then more latterly, I've been working with Tim, who's my co-founder, on developing the CBPLUS brand, and we've been working in the CBD space for the last sort of three and a half years. Tim a little bit longer than myself, actually.
So how does that happen? How do you transition from wine and gin to CBD?
Well, so Tim and I, we actually met back in 2008. So the wine company I used to work for actually used Tim's marketing agency to handle all of the consumer activation, especially around the 2009 Lions tour of South Africa and the 2013 tour of Australia. So him and I knew each other way back when. And then in 2015, Tim was actually approached by a CBD company from the Czech Republic who wanted to use his company to market them in the UK. They didn't have a team on the ground, so they actually brought me in to help on a freelance basis with some consultancy and sort of sales strategy, etc. So we kind of got ingrained in the CBD world back then, and forward fast a couple of years, we decided we could see the opportunity. There was definitely a gap in the market for somebody to make CBD accessible to the mainstream consumer, and we wanted to take it.
Nice, I like that. So I guess, for the uninitiated, what is CBD?
Oh, crikey, CBD, the sciencey bit. So CBD, it's a cannabinoid, which is a part of the hemp plant. There's lots of cannabinoids that are found in the hemp plant. The two most prevalent are CBD, which is becoming far more well known now, and the second is THC. So THC is the psychoactive, or is the component, that's responsible for the psychoactive high if you smoke the good stuff, or wacky backy, or however you want to refer to it. Yeah. So there's THC and then there's CBD. So the two, they're found naturally in the hemp plant. There's normally a little bit of THC that's found when CBD is derived out of the plant. But with all the sophisticated development in extraction processes over the last few years, it means that you can now get 100% CBD isolate from the hemp plant, meaning there's no THC, so it's completely safe, it's completely legal, it's not going to make you high, it's definitely not going to make you hallucinate or anything else that you might read spuriously on the internet, and you can get some really, really great benefits from it.
Great. So obviously you use the product yourself, which I think is important for one, but tell me about the benefits you've had.
So benefits I've had. So we've actually built a brand that's designed for active people, and I'm definitely on the amateur end of the active people scale. Definitely, just to clarify that. But I've spent my life as an adult doing triathlons, marathons, a lot of CrossFit, running, swimming, cycling, you name it. I love being outside and being active, and with that comes a whole array of sort of different challenges, from muscle fatigue and soreness just from training every day, falling over, abrasions, cuts, niggles, strains, tissue damage, things like that. And I always used to be searching for or reading magazines and trying to find something that would speed the recovery up or help me just get a little bit of an edge on a performance. And, I've massaged magnesium oil into my body. I've taken beetroot shots to reduce lactic acid buildup and all these kind of things. So for me, when I was learning about CBD, I was really intrigued in how its benefits could help me topically, so help my body repair from, open wounds if I've, fallen over running or something, and also from kind of muscle tiredness more than anything. So I've been quite fortunate that I've never had anything major, happen to me injury-wise. And actually, since I've been using the products, I'm probably in the best shape, not physically, but the best shape in terms of fitness of my life, which is great. So Probably the hero product for me is actually the CBD massage oil, and I just find that really helps. It's super moisturizing on the skin as well, so it creates a really nice kind of elasticity, which I've noticed now when I do fall over, which is actually quite frequently. I don't actually tear the skin as much as I used to, because the skin's in really, really nice supple condition as well. And then massaging it in, my muscle soreness is, almost non-existent. And even at CrossFit this morning, I've had one rest day in 12 days, and the coach sort of said, how are you feeling getting back into it? And I said, I'm okay. I'm tired, but I've not got muscle fatigue at all. And that's been really one of the main benefits for me as a busy person on the go, not having to stop my training because, I'm tired and my muscles hurt, and, I just can't keep going.
Yeah. And I guess as an entrepreneur, sometimes you need that outlet, and if your body gives up on you first, that's not good. And I can relate to that. Okay, so talk to me about how, in a space where nobody existed 5 years ago, particularly in the UK, to suddenly it's a space everybody wants to get into. How do you cope with that? What's your plan?
What's the plan? Well, we see people coming into the category as a really good thing, because what the CBD category needs is needs some sort of legitimization, really. And the job that we've all got to do is to educate the consumer as to what CBD is, why it can help them, and going back to your opening question, what is CBD? When people have heard of it, they'll link it to cannabis. I often get asked, jovially now, so you've gone from selling booze to being a drug dealer. The level of kind of education that is required is high. So we see more brands coming into the space, or more legitimate brands coming into the space, is a good thing. Again, coming from a booze background, you need more than one brand in a space for it to be a category as well. If we were the only CBD brand out there, then we're never going to get any traction, because no one's going to give us any space on shelf, and no consumers are really going to buy into it, because it will remain very niche. Yeah. So we see the opportunity to make CBD accessible to a mainstream consumer. So that doesn't mean just with the one brand that we've got in the market at the moment. You've got to have, different propositions for different channels, and that target different consumers, because the benefits of CBD are so far reaching, from being able to help an older person that might garden and walk a lot, but just through wear and tear of being older, they've got some pain that they're looking to manage, they've got some niggles, they might have skin complaints, so if they apply sun cream when they're going out for a walk or something, it inflames, it aggravates their skin, and they could benefit from the skin calming properties of CBD within that sun cream. But so their requirement for it is completely different to, say, a professional athlete, who, like we said before, really wants to be able to perform every day, train hard, and not get, muscle fatigue regularly. So we see brands coming in as a good thing. It legitimizes the space. It helps from an education perspective, and it kind of helps to break down some of those entry barriers to the category by consumers seeing more CBD brands out there. Our game plan, as I just alluded to, is, we don't want to be a one-trick pony. There's not a one-size-fits-all. So it's about, portfolio and category segmentation, and putting propositions together that are specific to consumers and different groups of consumers' needs.
So it feels like my next question before I ask it, and I promise the listeners we haven't prepped any of this, but you've touched on something there. You can't please all of the people all the time. So a lot of businesses that I've worked with, businesses I've consulted for, they take one product to market and then they try and sell it to everybody. You're describing the absolute opposite of taking multiple products to market and categorizing into niches. Why are you taking that approach?
Because one size doesn't fit all, yeah. And not everybody is going to buy the brand that we've created as a start point. It's designed for an active consumer. It's unisex. It's the product range we refer to as a kit bag of essentials. So it's targeting a consumer that is very different from, for example, a supermarket shopper. The price point's different, the products are different, the look and feel and smell of them is completely different as well. So we'd be really naive and quite frankly really stupid if we thought that the CBPLUS brand we could just put everywhere in the market and this thing's going to do really well and everyone's going to buy it and want to use it. So I don't know.
No, I think you've got an advantage in the fact that you've come from a background where the market's hugely diversified. So if you're working in wine or gin, there's gins at the lower end of the market. There's ultra premium gins. Same with wine. A lot of people listening to this podcast, starting out in business, maybe very established in business, don't know about that kind of market diversification, and they don't necessarily understand that just because something is brilliant and works doesn't mean it's for everyone. And I guess what I'm asking is, how did you decide what to go to market with first? How did you know how to diversify and what your next adventure is, and from there?
Okay, so we started with the CBPLUS brand because so Tim and I are both active people, so we come at it from quite different spaces. So Tim's he gardens a lot, he's outdoors a lot, hikes, swims, and he's got a large family as well. So they're active people, and he feels the wear and tear of life, shall we say, and was aware of the benefits of CBD and was using it obviously before I was. As I've alluded to, my life's been built around being active as well. So there was we're almost building during the research and the development part of building the product range. We were our own case studies really as a start point. And so that was quite a logical first step. When you also look at sort of the active or participation sport in the UK, there's 6.6 million regular runners in the UK. That's a huge community of people that, yes, you'll have some that are just running once a week or twice a week, but you'll have some that are taking it seriously, running, they're getting good for age qualifications in marathons and things like that. So you've got a real diverse spread of consumer there, but they've all got one thing in common, and that's that they run and that they want to look after their body probably to help them continue to do that. So if you look at active people, it's yes, you can break even that 6.6 million group of million runners down, but you've got an active community there, and it's similar in all different sports that that understand the language that you're talking about. They understand what you're trying to do with the brand, and they're almost not pre-sold, but you've de-risked some of the category entry around CBD because you're building products that are specific for them.
Yeah.
So or for an active person rather. So that was why we wanted to go with kind of CBPLUS and an active brand as a start point. It also makes getting the products to market. There was more logic there you can have a direct to consumer website. A lot of consumers in this space are used to buying directly from brand owners or via affiliate groups or companies like Wiggle. We've got a partnership with Rafa Cycling, so our products are available in the Rafa Manchester Clubhouse, and these are where you can build communities through your products, both on your own website and through independent retail, and then through, advertising online and building a social media following, versus building a very mainstream retail brand as a start point that basically requires someone that owns 500, 600, 700 stores plus to say, hey, yeah, I'll give you a shot. I'll put your CBD brand in all of my stores. And if you're going to build a brand and go there first, then it's going to take a lot longer, and it's going to be more difficult for you to prove your case, the consumer demand, get the feedback. And as we'll know as brand owners or entrepreneurs or whatever the phrase is, that there is a lot of trial and error that goes in the early stages as well. So you'd be spending a lot of time before you even get to being in front of the consumer with a brand built for that or built for a mainstream retailer before you've got without getting the product out there.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful advice. I think a lot of people, particularly because of programs like Dragon's Den or that kind of thing, Shark Tank in America, they think, oh, I've got a product and now all I need to do is take it to a major retailer and job done. And
I spent my life selling to the supermarket. So, We're in the wine days, I looked after Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Tesco. I launched wine brands into major retailer in Australia, Hong Kong, and China as well. And it's no easy feat. One of the brands, as you know, within our bioactive health portfolio, we're talking to the major retailers here in the UK with, but it's a long process. There's 2 ranging windows a year, that are generally 6 months apart, and you'd be working definitely, as we've been doing, on a category that's as new as CBD. You're working almost 12 to 18 months out, because there's so much work that's got to go on in the background with these guys to get you to a point that they feel the proposition is right and that the timing's right. So on one hand, working with a big supermarket or a big retailer such as Boots or Superdrug, for example, is amazing. Holland and Barrett, it's great because the volume's big. You look at a pipe fill order thinking, great, my opening order is going to be like 50, 60,000 units. But the time it takes to get there with no sales beforehand it's a long lag period. And go back to my earlier point, you're not during that time you're not engaging your brand with a consumer. Now you could front load your marketing and spend hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds getting your brand out there, but they can't buy it anywhere.
Yeah.
So then you create frustration. And, I've had some experience with that working with a startup soft drinks brand. We did a lot of consumer sampling and activation work around the country at leisure centres and things. And then when everyone asks, oh, where can I buy it? And they've tasted it and they love it. And you're like, well, here in, the Guildford Spectrum, when you come on a Saturday and the mum says, well, can I buy this for my kids to take to school? No, we don't have a retail listing. You create as much frustration with your brand, with a consumer, as you do for yourself. So it's not great ideas, and supermarkets or mainstream retailers it's not always the most logical first step.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So what's the biggest challenge you've had so far?
Probably every business owner's biggest challenge if you're creating a consumer goods brand is probably cash flow. Mm-hmm. Cash. How do you finance it? How do you get into production? We've done all of that. We've self-funded it to date, which is difficult. We're looking to raise investment at the moment to obviously help with the consumer marketing and getting the brand out there, and obviously fast track the other couple of brands that we've got in the stable ready to go as well. But I would say the biggest challenge is cash flow in a business in the infancy. It's tough. Yeah.
Amen.
So I'm sure you can relate.
I can. Yeah, I think with the nature of what I do, 50% of the businesses we deal with are in that place of where's the next paycheck coming from, and they can see it and they can model it, but the reality versus what actually happens is not always a nice pretty model. I was talking to the team that growth curves aren't actually a thing. You have growth steps, and the problem is that on steps you have plateaus, and nobody likes a plateau. So it's but when you then take a step back and look at how far you've come, it's incredible, but it's just never going to be that perfect diagonal that you wish it was. And I think that's a really important point for anyone looking to launch a brand or a product, or to get into the supermarkets, or to get into even independent retailers, is how are you going to make sure that you survive long enough for it to become viable?
Absolutely.
So talk to me about how your experience in the wine and gin sector has really helped so far.
Well, it definitely helps at the end of the day when I can open a nice bottle of wine, or rather an affordable bottle of wine that I know is I'm going to feel like I've got good value for money for while I'm putting on my money for the new business. How's it helped? So I've been very fortunate actually especially with the wine company that I worked for, because I joined it in quite an embryonic stage of its life cycle as well. There's 3 guys that set the brand or the business up, and I joined them 2 years in. So there was that real kind of startup culture there as well. So I got a lot of exposure early on. I was managing national accounts at quite a young age as well. And that's probably where my understanding of how the supermarkets work or dealing with large volume customers works, full stop, and exposure to managing the P&L. Because I did that at a very young age. And probably one of the biggest bits of advice I was given was whenever you're asked for marketing money or to spend anything, which again, as you know, Joel, as a business owner, you get asked a lot, is, if it was your money, would you see it as a good investment? And so even when I was employed and working in the wine trade and looking after big supermarkets, also working with smaller independents as well, but that really resonated with me. And every time that I was asked about something, I really analysed it. I didn't just go back and sort of say to one of the owners, oh, well, if we spend this money, we'll they'll give us this exposure or we'll get this listing, because listing fees used to be quite a big thing back in the day as well. And because I knew I was going to be greeted with, okay, so if that was your cash, if that's your coming out your paycheck, is it a worthwhile investment? So I think wine was quite subjective or very subjective as well. So dealing with buyers, you're dealing with a lot of opinion as opposed to statistical analysis of where a consumer's at. So you'd often go to a buyer meeting, and instead of looking at the sales performance, we'd be talking about the residual sugar levels of the wine, because the buyer wanted to adjust it, which probably meant a buying trip to South Africa for them to come to the winery and tweak the wines. And there was this subjective, like a subjective lean to the buy-in, I suppose. And I think my experience so far with skincare, which is where we sort of see ourselves sitting, or with CBD as a category that's emerging, is that there's more, because there's not that many statistics out there for the category as it is at the moment. There's more of a subjective opinion about where it should be going, what the products maybe should look like, or how they should be positioned. That's more subjective as opposed to actually can be consumer driven at the moment, and that's because there's not as much insight. So I suppose some of the learnings that I got from the wine trade will help me with those buying meetings, because it allows you to remember that you've got to always try and bring everything back to the consumer, because not that the customer's always right, but consumer driven insights and consumer driven demand is if that's at the heart of what you're trying to do, ultimately you'll be, I would say, 90% of the time going in the right direction. And if you can communicate that to whoever you're trying to sell to, then that will cut through.
Yeah, no, that's a massively important thing that gets very lost. I think it's very easy as any business owner of any size to start to believe your own hype and get caught up in your own product or your own brand or whatever it is, your own service. And actually, when it comes down to it, it's whoever's consuming it should be driving the feedback into that brand. So on that, and I know you're obviously working with buyers at the moment, so you have to be careful what you say, but what do you do when you're sat in front of buyers and they're throwing opinion at you rather than dealing with fact?
Oh, I mean, going back to, it's probably easier to go back and talk about it from a wine perspective, but I would try and bring it always statistically back, So I'm a bit of a numbers geek as well. So I used to love my Nielsen data and getting my AC Nielsen reports on a monthly basis, and, average price points, market share, distribution points, how the retailers are changing as well. I used to love that. And I think if you can get involved in the data to that level, it's easier to take somebody away from their opinion. You can be respectful, but you can say, and with the wine conversations, a lot of the time, it would be brought back to the average price for a bottle of wine. Let's be realistic about the consumer that we're talking about, that's buying the products that you want to talk about. You don't like the flavour. You don't think that our Merlot's as good as someone else's Merlot. That's absolutely fine, and I respect your opinion on that. And, I might like someone else's more than I like my own, but statistically, we're selling this amount of product, and this is the average price of a bottle of wine at the moment in the UK, specifically within the category we're talking about. So we're not doing badly here. We're up, our sales performance is up, or whatever the numbers would allow you to bring them away from their opinion to get back to making your point. That to me is the easiest way to deflect, because, or not to deflect, but if you're speaking with fact over opinion, there will come a point that will cut through. You know, these guys are there they're paid to do a job, they're paid to make money for whoever they're working for, and they're paid to sell products. And at the end of the day, if you can politely remind them of that and make them feel, you know, actually we're doing a great job here, we shouldn't be arguing about the residual sugar level or the oak on this wine. Let's look at actually what we are doing. We're doing a great job.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing for any business, is to prove you're a safe bet, is to show, well, look, here's the social proof, here's the data analysis to show that actually this works. So I'm making your life easy for you because I don't need your opinion. And with all due respect, let's not talk about that anymore. Just buy the bloody thing.
Definitely. And there's a big one at the moment, you know, within the CBD world. So there's legislation that is being brought in now. So for the CBD oil, which is what CBD is most widely known for, which is it's classed as a supplement, really. So it's an oil that you take orally. So you'd put 2 drops or 3 drops, whatever your dosage is, under your tongue and hold it there. So because it's ingested and it's classified, therefore, as a supplement, the legislation has fallen to the Food Standards Agency to kind of police the purity and the quality of the products that are on sale in the UK, and to absolutely verify that there is nil THC in those products, because that's what the legislation is specifying. So at the moment, when you're having conversations with more informed buyers of pharmacy groups and things like that, and sort of within the sports world, physiotherapists, you know, we've done some work with the SMA as well, you know, they'll ask the question about where are you with your FSA application? And do you know what? There's only 40 companies that have actually got an FSA, Food Standards Agency, application in for this. It's called the Novel Foods application, which is what the legislation will be. So there's 40 companies. Now, if you think how many CBD brands there are out there, and anyone that doesn't know what CBD is after this podcast, if you Google it, you'll be met with pages and pages of different brands. And basically what the legislation is going to say is that once they've approved or not approved, there'll only be, at the moment, there's legally only 40 brands that should be being sold anyway, you know, and out of those, some more of that will fall by the wayside. So going back to your point, Joel, I think proving that you're a safe bet, you know, and backing that up with the statistics of what you're doing socially, you know, sales wise as well, you know, and your associations, you know, genuine associations as well. It's really important.
Yeah, hugely. And I think without throwing too many rocks or naming any brands, for those that don't know, in the CBD world, there are a lot of people selling direct to consumer through their website or whatever. And the only people testing the CBD content of their product is themselves. So, and that isn't the case with your brand. And so I must make that clear. But it's a frustration in the marketplace at the moment that it is becoming more regulated, and technically it is regulated, but as you mentioned, there are still brands out there that aren't registered. And you see this in lots of emerging industries where stuff comes to market and then over time the wheat gets sorted from the chaff. How have you dealt with that till now, where you're bringing a legitimate product to the marketplace with values to genuinely help people, and you know that some of your competitors, in inverted commas, are bringing shit to the marketplace?
I mean, I suppose we've come to market, whilst the brand was, you know, 3.5 years in development, we actually launched at a time that the legislation had been announced. So we got our application in basically at the same time that we were launching. So one of the positive things for us with any consumer sort of communication that we've had with buyers, we've immediately been able to say, and this is our FSA application number. We also, we've got full traceability of our CBD isolate that we use all the way back, that includes the soil traceability. So we've bolt and braces all the way through our system so that we know that we are, you know, untouchable from any issue with the product. And I suppose dealing with, you know, every industry's got the riffraff, as we'd call them, or, you know, the cowboys that will, you know, muddy the waters and unfortunately, especially in something that category that's as slightly controversial as being derived from the cannabis plant, there's probably a little bit more of it within the CBD world. We have to work on the fact that, we don't talk down about any brand. We never name any brands. The legislation will come into place. It will be enforced. It will be policed. And what that will do by default is give the consumer some legitimate brands to choose from, and it will give them the safety net that there's some brands out there that have got, the rubber stamp of approval on their packaging, that they've got all the traceability and the batch analysis on their website. And there's some good brands out there doing this already as well. It's not just us, and as more of those brands come into the market, we just rest on the fact that consumers will become educated, and they'll feel safe in trying the brands that are safe and legal to do so, as all these other ones. Basically, they're cut out. Any reputable online retailer or physical retailer on the high street won't touch those brands. So it will become quite apparent to consumers very early on that if their only route to market is through their own website, that actually there's probably a reason for that, and therefore that they're not going to buy from them. They're going to buy from one that they see, heard of. Word of mouth will improve or increase as well, and brands that they're seeing out and about in the marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess you could say it's a controversial product to an extent, but I suppose if you drank 100% alcohol, you'd be in a bit of trouble too. So it's
absolutely.
But nobody bats an eyelid now because it's such an established market. It's that kind of.
Well, and long term, we do absolutely see an opportunity with the legalization of THC as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's too far in the future. And again, we've had a lot of this interesting conversations within the team and within the wider network as well. I mean, Aid McEwen, who's our MD, he's got a huge background in huge amount of experience, in major retail from Asda, brand Asda, all the way through to manufacturing and wine, beer and spirits trade as well. And even several years ago when he worked with Cobra Beer, they were talking about THC, the legalization of THC, and how they incorporate that into their plans, for the future. And how is THC consumed? Smoking it won't be trendy. Is it going to be consumed in a shot? Is it an additive to, drinks that already exist out there, or will it become an entirely new format? So, two big things that come out of any of the booze companies that are doing research on THC are that one of these might make you laugh, but and Aid shared this with us, was that the feedback from consumers is one of the big things they don't like is how they look when they've been drinking. On photographs, because we look disheveled. You can tell someone's had a skinful. And then the second thing is the calories. You've got two really big things that are putting off definitely a young consumer coming through, because I think I'm a bit out of touch with the statistics, but the 18 to 25 age bracket a couple of years ago had the lowest alcohol consumption rates that had ever been here in the UK. As people are more into fitness, they were more aware of how they look after themselves. And obviously in a world of selfies and Instagram, people don't want to be photographed looking half cut. So how the legalization of THC in the future transpires for the generations coming through and how it's consumed, I think is a really interesting one.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think anyone that's visited sort of California or West Coast Canada will have seen a fascinating marketplace. A true story. I went with my wife to British Columbia, and we went for a coffee and a donut before we went on a whale watching trip. And it panned out. It was the funniest whale watching trip we've ever been on, but because we just didn't realise that we'd both just eaten donuts with edible THC in.
Oh, brilliant!
And it was so blasé that you just bought it. It wasn't. You wouldn't know unless you really delved down. So every time the boat rocked or hit a wave, we were just laughing our heads off, and we were both looking at each other. Why are we laughing our heads off? And then it dawned on us that It was a special coffee shop.
Oh, fabulous. What a story.
Yeah.
Did you go back for more?
It was a bit of a. My wife's a bit of an adventurer, so we had sort of 20 days flying around with lots of driving. So we're responsible drivers, and didn't go for second dibs. But it was that kind of. It was so mainstream there already, and it was only just on the cusp of legalisation. I'm not even sure if it was fully legal at that point. But then we noticed it everywhere. It was in gummies, which is CBD. You're getting gummies here, obviously. It was in drinks. It was in food. It was in creams, skincare, everything, and all for different reasons. Some of it was genuinely just to get high. Some of it was for people with anxiety. There was a really massive range, and we're just on the cusp of that now becoming an absolutely explosive marketplace, nearly worldwide. There'll be obviously the obvious countries that are just never going to embrace that, but some of those countries don't have alcohol yet. So, what does that look like for you guys if that happens?
Well, I mean, it's an exciting thing for us if it happens. And I mean, obviously, THC, the products and the brands that exist today within kind of the bioactive health portfolio wouldn't all of a sudden just start containing THC.
Sure.
Or not, and obviously topically it wouldn't have an impact, but we're definitely looking ahead at what the range would look like and how we would capitalize on that, or exploit the opportunity rather, of THC being legal, and how we get that to the consumer. It's definitely part of the research groups that are going on at the moment.
That's fascinating.
I'm not going to say any more than that.
No, I completely understand. So, my last question, and I ask this question to every guest, and it's got nothing to do with what we've been talking about, but what's your favourite film and why?
Oh. Could have pre-warned me about that.
No, you judge a person by this answer.
Oh, I'm rubbish at films as well. Training Day.
Oh, nice.
I always get the guy wrong. It's Samuel L. Jackson, isn't it?
No, it's Denzel Washington.
Right, there we go. I always get the guy wrong. Yeah, Denzel Washington. Yeah, Training Day.
Denzel Washington, Ethan Hawke. You love it so much you remembered the actor.
I always get it wrong. I always say it's the wrong person in it. But Training Day, yeah. So when I have to think about the film, I'm not good with films. I don't watch a lot of films, probably because I don't have time. I prioritize making time for other things than watching films. It's the film that I could watch over and over again, and there's very few of those.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I just think it's I love how the policeman gets sucked into a world
of corruption.
But he was never ever going to, and then how you realise, I think it's a great film.
Nice. Hayley, you've been an awesome guest. There's so many takeaways from this podcast. I can't wait for people to hear it. Thank you for coming on the Stay Hungry podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.